It was a rainy Tuesday morning when I found the letter on the kitchen table. Just a few lines, neatly written in his handwriting. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. My world shattered in an instant. For 9 years, Alex and I had built a life together, a cozy apartment, weekend hikes. Dreams of a family. Now, all that was left was an empty chair and a sinking feeling in my chest. I sat there for hours, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of it. How could someone who promised forever walk away without a fight? My mind raced. Was it me? What did I do wrong? The silence was deafening. Even the ticking of the clock felt like a cruel reminder of time moving on time. I wasn't ready to face. That evening, I packed a bag and drove to my sister's place. She didn't ask questions, just wrapped me in a hug and made me tea. In that moment, I realized. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I couldn't yet see. The first week alone felt like learning to walk again. Every corner of our apartment held memories. The mug he'd gifted me on our first anniversary, the playlist we'd made for road trips, the dent in the wall from when we'd moved the sofa. I couldn't sleep in our bed, so I dragged a mattress into the living room. My sister, Maya, became my anchor. She'd show up with groceries and force me to take walks. You don't have to figure it all out today, she'd say. But I needed to figure something out. I started small, making my bed every morning, brewing coffee without thinking of him, rearranging the living room to erase the ghosts of us. One night, I found an old sketchbook. I hadn't drawn in years, but my hands moved on their own. I sketched a tree, bare branches reaching upward, roots digging deep. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like truth. Maybe I could grow from this. Anger came when I least expected it. One morning, I opened Instagram and saw a photo of Alex at a concert, smiling carefree. Like he had ripped my heart out. My hands trembled as I typed a furious message, then deleted it. No. I won't give him that power. Instead, I laced up my running shoes and ran. Not for fitness, but to burn the fire inside me. With every step, I imagined leaving behind the guilt, the what-ifs. The voice that whispered him not enough. By mile 3, my legs ached, but my mind felt clearer. That night, I wrote a letter I'd never send. Pages and pages of rage, sorrow, and questions. Then I burned it in my backyard, watching the flames turn my pain into ash. It didn't fix anything, but it was a start. I realized. Anger wasn't my enemy. It was energy, and I could use it. For years, I'd introduced myself as Alex's wife. Now, I didn't know who I was without that label. So I started asking strangers, "What's your story?" At the coffee shop, the bus stop, even the grocery store. Their answers, funny, painful, inspiring, reminded me that life was bigger than my heartbreak. I joined a writing group. The first time I shared a piece, my voice shook. But the woman next to me said, "Your words matter." So I kept writing. About fear, about hope, about the weird beauty of solo dinners and late-night talks with my cat. One evening, I recorded myself reading a poem. I posted it online, half expecting ridicule. Instead, messages poured in. "This helped me, thank you for being real." For the first time in months, I felt seen, not as the girl whose husband left, but as a person with stories to tell. Lena walked into my life like a hurricane. We met at a book club I'd forced myself to join. She was loud, unapologetic, and laughed at her own jokes. "You look like you need a margarita," she announced after the meeting. Over drinks, I blurted out everything: the letter, the running, the nights I'd cried into my pillow. Lena listened, then said, "Okay, now let's talk about what you want." No pity, no platitudes. Just a challenge. She dragged me to karaoke, dance classes. Even a pottery workshop where I made a lopsided vase that somehow felt like victory. With Lena, I remembered how to laugh, not the polite chuckle I'd used to hide pain, but the kind that made my stomach hurt. She taught me, healing isn't linear. Sometimes it's messy, loud, and covered in clay. The divorce papers arrived, and suddenly moving on meant figuring out how to pay rent. I'd always worked part-time, relying on Alex's income. Now, my savings were dwindling, and panic crept in every time I checked my bank account. I swallowed my pride and asked for help. My boss offered more hours. Maya's friend connected me with a freelance gig. I sold old jewelry, tutored kids online, and even started a small Etsy shop selling my sketches. It wasn't glamorous, but each paycheck felt like a tiny triumph. One night, balancing receipts at my kitchen table, I realized something. I'd survived 3 months on my own. I'd fed myself, kept a roof over my head, and even bought flowers for the windowsill. Maybe making it wasn't about grand gestures. Maybe it was about showing up, day after day, and doing the next right thing. Lena booked us a last-minute weekend trip to the coast. "You need salt air and bad tourist food," she declared. I hesitated. What if I fell apart away from my routine? But packed my bag anyway. The moment I stepped onto the beach, something shifted. The ocean didn't care about my divorce. The seagulls didn't judge my messy emotions. I walked for miles, feeling the sand between my toes, listening to waves crash like a heartbeat. At sunset, I sat on a rock and wrote in my journal, "I'm not broken. I am becoming." For the first time, the idea of forever alone didn't terrify me. Instead, I imagined possibilities. Solo travels, new hobbies, friendships I hadn't yet made. The world was vast, and I was finally opening my eyes to see it. Months later, I ran into Alex at a grocery store. He looked different, thinner, his eyes less bright. We stood there awkwardly, a cart full of everyday items between us like a barrier. "How are you?" he asked. The question felt absurd. How could I sum up the storm inside me in 3 words? "In figuring it out," I said finally. He nodded, shifting his weight. There were so many things I wanted to ask. Did you ever doubt your choice? Do you miss us? But the answers didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I no longer needed his validation to keep going. That night, I wrote down every what if that haunted me. What if I'd been different? What if we'd tried therapy? Then I crossed them out, one by one. Underneath, I wrote, what if I'm exactly where I need to be? It wasn't denial. It was a choice to stop living in the past and start building a future I could be proud of. I took a part-time role at a local nonprofit helping women rebuild their lives after crises. At first, I thought I was there to give back. But the women I met, survivors of abuse, job loss, grief, taught me more than I could ever teach them. One day, a client named Rosa said, "You look familiar. Have we met before?" I realized she'd seen my vulnerable posts online. "You helped me keep going," she admitted. In that moment, my pain transformed. It wasn't a weakness anymore. It was a bridge. I started leading workshops on resilience. Standing in front of a room, sharing my story, I felt a power I'd never known. My scars weren't flaws, they were proof of survival. And if my journey could light the way for someone else, then every tear had been worth it. It was a tiny thing. A stranger complimenting my painting at a market. "It makes me happy," she said. For weeks, I'd been creating art without showing it to anyone. But her smile reminded me, joy isn't selfish. It's necessary. I began seeking small pleasures like treasures. The smell of fresh bread, the sound of rain on the roof, the way my cat curled into my lap at night. I made a joy list, 100 things that made me smile, and added to it daily. Some days, the list saved me. One evening, I danced alone in my living room to an old playlist. Not for anyone's approval, not to get over heartbreak, but because my body remembered how to move with delight. In that moment, I understood. Healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about making space for new happiness. I wrote to my younger self. "Dear 20-year-old me," I began, "you think love means never being alone. You think marriage is the finish line. You're so wrong and so brave for trying anyway." I poured out everything. The fear of failing, the shame of not being enough, the anger at my naivety. Then I wrote what I wish someone had told me. You are not a half. You are a whole universe, capable of loving yourself first. Reading it back, I cried. Not the wrenching sobs of early grief, but quiet tears of understanding. I wasn't writing to a ghost. I was speaking to the part of me that still needed to hear. You are enough. It happened on a Tuesday, the same day he left, years ago. I woke up, made coffee, and realized I wasn't counting the days since the end anymore. I was just living. I called Maya. "I think I'm okay," I said. She laughed. "Took you long enough." We both knew it wasn't linear. There were still bad days. But now I had tools. My art, my friends, my stubborn belief that growth is possible. That afternoon, I planted a tree in my backyard, a sapling with deep roots and bright green leaves. As I patted the soil, I whispered, "Grow with me." It wasn't a promise to never hurt again. It was a vow to keep becoming. Today, I wake up and choose my story. Some days, it's about art. Others, it's about helping others. Sometimes it's just about watching the sunrise and feeling grateful for another chance. I still have questions. Will I fall in love again? Will I ever stop missing the life I imagined? But now those questions don't paralyze me. They're part of the journey and not the destination. My divorce wasn't the end of my love story. It was the beginning of my self-love story. And if you're reading this, know this: your pain isn't proof of failure. It's proof you're alive, growing, and capable of writing a new chapter. The best one yet.